This week on the show, Matt Kalman joins us to talk about the Bruins' pursuit of a potential superstar. We touch on the Celtics' surprising steal at the end of the draft. What have the Red Sox been up to? All that and more coming up. Calling It starts right now. Welcome to the show. This is the Calling It podcast, powered by CLNS Media. My name is Alex Barth, flying solo, at least for a bit this week. Alex Lebowitz, a last-minute scratch on the program today. But, bad week for Lebowitz call out sick. We got a lot to get to. It was draft weekend. Both the NBA and NHL, Bruins and Celtics, find themselves in the middle of some big storylines. We'll talk about those. Red Sox is a heck of a storyline that dropped on Friday. And then they had a big series with the Seattle Mariners, so we'll get all into that. But I want to start with the Boston Bruins because, believe it or not, even with the Celtics in this conversation, and I think I'm willing to call the Kawhi Leonard rumors over, and we'll get into that in a later segment. But as of right now, the Bruins are the only Boston team pursuing a superstar, so we start there. We are now joined on the phone by Matt Kalman. He covers the Bruins for CBS Boston. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me.
We'll get into the Bruins draft in a bit. They were a bit quiet at the draft, and a lot of the reason people think they were quiet is that they're waiting, as much of the hockey world is, on John Tavares and his big decision, where he will go. Now, we're recording this Monday at about 1 o'clock, so things can change. And Matt, I promise we'll get this up as soon as possible, so you're on top of it here on our show. But what's the latest you're hearing, and do the Bruins actually have a chance at John Tavares?
Well, I mean, they have as much of a chance as anybody that's, getting a chance to talk to them. And I guess it sounds like they're amongst a handful of teams that could, be gauging his interest. Clearly, there are teams that have a better opportunity for him, have a better chance, can offer him more, like the Islanders can. They can offer him the most, and the other teams that have more cap space and other things to offer. But clearly, the Bruins don't want to rule themselves out of these things. And, as you saw with the Kovalchuk pursuit, they're not against going after some big names here, and even if it comes at the expense of having to move a veteran out, or even not having space for maybe some of the prospects that think they're going to get a chance this fall.
What do you think of the strategy to stand pat at the draft and kind of hinge? It seems like they're hinging their whole offseason on John Tavares and earlier on Ilya Kovalchuk. Is that a strategy they can afford to have at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's just, you can't really call them quiet from a draft that had, 2 or 3 trades of major players. And so clearly a lot of teams were standing pat waiting to see where things were going to go, not just Kovalchuk and Tavares, but Carlson and maybe even some of the other UFAs. I think this interview process really changes the draft strategy for teams in terms of trades because they want to, since they have this opportunity to talk to some UFAs, you never know. You might hear something or connect with a guy that will come cheaper in terms of, not having to give up assets than somebody who you'd have to trade for at the draft. And so I think that's kind of changed the dynamic here. And, obviously the players that got moved at the draft didn't interest the Bruins. I mean, there was some talk that maybe they were interested in Hannafin, but that didn't seem like it was ever more than just a little inquiry. And, Dougie Hamilton clearly not coming back here, and then Grubauer not a guy that they were considering. So, not the worst weekend in the world, and clearly there's a lot of time here now to get some things done.
So now, obviously, the question is what happens next, and whether they sign John Tavares or not. There's been a lot of talk about 3 players on this roster that could move this offseason, and that's David Krejci, David Backes, and Torrey Krug. Let's start with David Krejci because I feel like we hear this every offseason. He's overpaid. He can't stay on the ice. They need to move him. But this year, those talks seem to be getting, at least on the outside, to another level. Do you believe it is in their plans to move David Krejci this offseason, regardless of whether or not they get Tavares?
No. I think it has to be a major improvement, like getting a Tavares or getting some sort of top 4D to do that. I mean, centers are at a premium these days. No less than Riley Nash, who we saw have a breakout year for the Bruins, is a hot commodity on the free agent market all of a sudden because so few centers are out there, and especially if Tavares goes back to the Islanders, there's a lot of teams shopping for centers that are going to be overpaying for people. And if you let David Krejci go, who is replacing him? The teams are struggling to find third centers. you don't want to put yourself in a hole to not have a second center, especially since the Bruins right now don't have a third center. If Riley Nash leaves, if you're talking about one of the kids, whether it's Frederick or Carlson or anyone like that, or if you're going to move Donato to center, this is not an area of strength if you're going for a kid that you don't know what you're going to get out of him. So, and the Bruins are going to have to consider bringing somebody in to replace Riley Nash if he leaves. So, I don't think Krejci is on the move unless it's because of something huge that they have to really get that money off the books.
Backus has some history as center. Do you think he could maybe step into that role, or is he another guy, or is he a guy that you think maybe they're trying to get that money off the books?
Yeah, I mean, again, this will be another scenario where you have to really be making an impact, and I'm going to probably be repeating myself and jump ahead because Torrey Krug will be the same thing. I mean,
right.
unless you're really getting an improvement, I mean, if you're in the mix, if someone like a Jacob Trouba becomes available and you need to move some money to accommodate them, and not to mention the roster space, then you're considering trading these guys. But David Backus, I don't know if he'd be able to move to center at this stage. He just doesn't have the wheels to cover that kind of ground. But we've seen him be a pretty decent wing in the bottom six now and then. Obviously, he's been banged up, so it's hard to judge. And you'd probably expect at his age to keep having some injury issues, but. Considering what he brings in the locker room, you can pay a bottom six guy $6 million when you're the Bruins, and you're paying, half your forwards entry level or just a little more because there's so many young guys in the lineup. So it doesn't really hamstring them unless they're going for a big ticket like a Tavares type player. And just to move on to Torrey Krug, it's the same thing. I mean, the guy does things that not many defensemen in the league do, and he makes a lot of money, but how are you replacing him if you're adding, unless you're adding someone that's better than him, how are you getting better just because, you're going to go out and get a slightly bigger guy? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And let's face it, they were pretty close last year. And, when you take Brandon Carlo out of that lineup, it's a whole different ball game. And so there are ways to improve without, just trading guys just to clear cap space or whatever.
And it does feel like, at least to me, that people have forgotten exactly what this team did last year because they're talking about the trades of a lot of key players. Do you think it's going understated, at least externally, what the Bruins did last year? Do they really need to make a major move to be a cup contender in 2018-2019?
Well, that's just it. I mean, the only major move I see is they need a top six wing. I mean, they paid a premium to get Rick Nash last year. And you don't want to be doing that every year. And we know how much Don Sweeney kind of regretted not having a first-round pick. That's going to be the price every February and March at the trade deadline for guys like that. So if you can get one in free agency in the offseason and have him for the whole year, all the better. And at this point, there might not be many Rick Nash caliber kind of guys with Kovalchuk on, and with Rick Nash still in the questioning whether he's even going to play. It might be tough. They might be best to kind of split that money and just go for a couple of veterans, and maybe you bring back a Riley Nash, and then you spend some money on a Pat Maroon or a Michael Grabner. And then on defense, and like I said, they were pretty strong last year, and Mac Brzyk's going to get better. Brandon Carlo hopefully stays healthy; he'll get better. And even at his age, Torrey Krug, he seems to improve a little bit every year. And when you look at the way Kevin Miller's improved, you know that late 20s doesn't mean your improvement ends. And I don't think there's necessarily a need to upgrade the personnel there. Plus, you never know what you're going to get from the guys like Zaboro and Lawson when they get to camp. And Vakanainen obviously can't overlook him, I guess, at this point, because he might be the most seasoned and most upside of the three of those guys.
Yeah, and I want to talk about some of those names you just threw out. Vakanainen, Zaboro, you talked about Jacob Forsbacka-Karlsson earlier. These are guys, Forsbacka-Karlsson, it sounded like 2 years ago was going to be ready by this point. Zaboro is a guy they're very high on. Vakanainen was a top draft pick. If they do retain a lot of these players, which it seems like they're going to, where do the minutes come for these younger guys? Is there an odd man out from the team last year, or do these guys just go to Providence, stay overseas, stay in college, wherever they may be, and develop another year? How do they fit in some of this youth to a team that really already has a lot of it?
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys, there are openings. I mean, the forwards especially, obviously that third-line center spot will be open, and you might have a fourth-line job open if Timmy Schaller's not back. So, and there's no problem with starting a guy. These are more skilled players, but you can start them on the fourth line, a la Brad Marchand, and see how their career progresses. It's never you don't have to rush a guy into a top six role. And on defense, no doubt they're going to give guys like Vakanainen and Zaboro a chance to win jobs, and then they'll hash it out. Clearly, Adam McQuaid at this point is already an odd man out, probably a 7th D, and if somebody outplays a Kevin Miller or even a Matt Grzelcyk, they only brought back Grzelcyk. Everyone making a big deal about this contract. Clearly, it was just it's an RFA deal for a guy with not many rights, and so it's going to be a competition, and the best guys are going to play, and they'll have to hash out how to handle some of the guys that maybe are being displaced if they are.
Who of those young guys, specifically on the defensive core, Zaboral, Vakanainen, and there's a couple other names that are escaping me right now, but of those young defensemen they've got, and they've invested heavily in the draft and defense the last couple of years, who should people keep an eye on that you think really could step up and make a day one impact with the NHL club that maybe fans aren't looking at right now?
Yeah, I mean, Vakanainen is the one that everybody likes. He's there's a reason why they drafted him where they did and why they signed him now and intend to bring him to North America. The guy's made great strides playing against men. Not a lot of points on the board, but that does not reflect the type of player he is. He can skate amazingly. Everyone I talk to says his skating is great, and he can move the puck. His poise back there, and just needs to, like the old adage, the old cliches, get stronger and bigger and get the experience. And so they're pushing along his development here. He's going to come to North America, and I don't know if necessarily he's going to step in and play NHL Day 1, but we might see him get a cup of coffee this year, and otherwise he'll get tutored by Jay Leach down in Providence for a bit, and he could, make an impact down the road. But definitely a guy who's, meeting the expectations of being the draft pick like he was.
So just to kind of put a bow on all of it here before we let you go, Matt, and again, we're talking with Matt Kalman. He covers the Bruins for CBS Boston. Last year, the Bruins, I mean, it wasn't even until, late November that they really became that force. They had a rough start. People weren't expecting much from them. And then they have this incredible year. A lot of people want to say it's a fluke. Give me a reason why the Bruins can repeat what they did this upcoming season.
Oh, well, that's easy. I mean, look at the young players coming in to fill in, and the fact that they have this cap space and can put it to some decent use here in free agency. I mean, there's no reason to think that there's going to be much of a setback here. You got older guys who are, playing beyond their years. Guys like Bergeron and Chara, who are supposed to be in good decline but aren't. And plenty of young talent that we saw throughout last year, and then especially at the end when you're talking about a guy like Donato and the way DeBrus came through. There's no reason to believe that the future isn't even brighter than this past year.
All things looking Bruins right now. After a year where it seemed all things were lost last offseason, they bring in Bruce Cassidy, and who would have thought here's where we'd be a year later? This team is a frontline contender.
Exactly.
He is Matt Kalman from CBS Boston. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show and taking the time to talk Bruins with us.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Calling It is brought to you by American Broadcast Coaches, training the next generation of media talent and communicators. For more information, check out AmericanBroadcastCoaches.com.
Yeah, draft day, Johnny Manziel, 5 years later, how am I to
welcome back to the show. Thanks to Matt for joining us. Like I talked about at the top of the show, no Alex Lebowitz this week, last minute scratch. He's on the DL, so we have the original co-host of the Calling It podcast. For those who have been listening the whole damn time, Jimmy Young in the studio.
And if you have been listening the whole darn time, get a life, would you please?
No, come on.
Oh, wait. Wait. That would be Mrs. and Mr. Barth?
Don't antagonize my 5 listeners.
No, I love it, and you've done a great job, Alex.
Thank you.
And I know all about the birth of this podcast, let's just say.
It's in your basement.
Yeah, that's true, too. Donna's basement, if we want to be technically correct, okay?
So let's talk about, we talked about that first show. Let's talk some Celtics.
Okay, good.
NBA draft over the weekend. I got to go thanks to Nick Chelso, John Zanis, CLNS. I was there covering the draft at the new Auerbach Center, which is just jaw-dropping. Outstanding job they did. I haven't been to Warrior yet, so I can't compare them. I know that's what everybody likes to do now. But I will say that the Auerbach Center is amazing. It's a wonder they got Gordon Hayward without it.
And I'll tell you, it's also great to have those banners there and finally have a practice facility. Alex, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. You and I go back a long way. And way back when I was even younger than you, as a junior at Tufts University, I got my first media credential from Jeff Twiss, who remains the media relations director of the Boston Celtics. And I got to go to Celtics practice to interview John Havlicek. This was 1978, is when I was producing sports at Channel 4 in Boston. And I'll never forget going to the practice, and there was Havlicek and Tom Sanders and Dave Cowens and all these greats of the and they're practicing at Lexington Christian Academy, which I mean, it's a private school. I get it. For years, they practice at Hellenic College.
Well, they practiced at Brandeis for a while too, right?
Absolutely.
When did they start? When did they move to their Waltham facility?
Oh, goodness. I know the answer to that question because I also had physical therapy around that same time.
They weren't there yet in 86, right? Because
no.
in 86...
No, it was the 90s. It was definitely the 90s.
Well, when Reggie Lewis passed away, they were still at Brandeis, right? So it would have been after that.
Yep. I'm going to say right after that, like maybe 97, 98, in that range. You know.
So and now they are where they. Well, actually, they're not in Boston, right? It's Brighton, I think.
Brighton,
technically,
come on, it's part of Boston.
Okay,
it's part of Boston.
But
and yes, so they are in Boston. They're right. I give it the New Balance Group a lot of credit for allowing. I'm guessing that they own that land right there. And they made it available to the Bruins and the Celtics. I'm sure there was quite an interesting deal or contract in place that allowed that to happen. But it just lends itself to the fact that this is the greatest sports city in America. Okay? All due respect to the Bruins and their Adams Division banners. There are 17 banners for the Boston Celtics.
There's actually 18. They hung a blank one up.
Oh, I heard
next
about
to the 2008
That's
one.
right,
So
I heard
there's
about
18
that.
banners hanging, but only 17. It's not even blank as in there's no year. There's nothing. It's just white.
It's just a white banner.
It's ominous, but in a good way. But so they opened this great facility with the 27th pick in the draft. After picking in the top 5, the last 3 years, I believe?
Something like that.
Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum.
Yep.
Let's start there. Before we get into Robert Williams, let's start there. Are you surprised that they hung tight at 27? They didn't do anything?
Absolutely not, because obviously every team wants to improve, and you can improve through the draft. But the immediate improvement is far more guaranteed when you are drafting in the lottery, on the lottery side. Once you go outside that lottery, the immediate impact of a player is slim, unless you have someone very special who, and of course I happen to think that is Jason Tatum. I think that this kid is going to be a future Hall of Famer. I really believe that. And actually, he's already a future Hall of Famer. He will be a Hall of Famer.
You got to go up to top 3 to get that. You got to go up to top 3 to get that kind of player. I won't lie. I was a little surprised they didn't do anything just because that hasn't been Danny Ainge's MO. He will make these kind of out-of-the-blue, franchise-changing trades, right? Isaiah Thomas, the original trade that got them all those Nets picks, the Kevin Garnett trade, all of it. He hasn't been afraid to kind of throw out the rule book, and, making a big trade this year when you were just a game away from the finals seemed like it was Danny Ainge's MO. Now, am I okay that they didn't do anything? Absolutely, because they have a good team. It would have been cool to see them trade up, but I don't think they needed to, and I don't want to say I'm relieved that they didn't, because if they had, I know Danny would have made the right pick.
Yeah.
But I think standing pat at 27 this year is good. Last year, no, they needed to make the move. 2 years ago, they needed to make the move, etc. 27 was fine this year. And it looks like they got, potentially, a guy who's actually going to do something for this team this year if his alarm clock goes off and he wakes up.
He wakes up, which, these days you're drafting very young men in the draft. For the most part, the NBA draft consists of 18, 19, and 20-year-old, or 19 and 20-year-old kids anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, the one thing I have always looked for, when I go down the list of the NBA first round, I like to look at the ages. And I like to see which are the ones that have been in college basketball for maybe they're 21 or they're 22. Yeah. That's a completely different animal coming out of college. That being said, the reason why Danny, I don't think, made a move is I really do believe he believes in this team.
This team. Sorry, I thought you said this team, and I was going to say Robert Williams.
No, I think, look, Robert Williams is a project. There is no doubt in my mind. He's got athletic build. I like the fact that he's a defense-first kind of player, because that's how they coach these guys. This is how the team is right now. They are a team, Alex.
Yeah.
They are not a group of great basketball players. They are a great team.
Well, that's the Bill Belichick line. It's not about collecting talent. It's about building a team.
And look, I love how you quote Bill Belichick. There's a guy named Auerbach. They named the goddamn center after. They knew that too, by the way. God, these young kids today, I tell you, they don't read their history books.
You would have been proud of me. I was on a.
I'm always proud of you, Alex.
I was on a Celtics show with Mike Petraglia a couple months ago.
Trags!
And he was talking about
CLNS Media's number one superstar.
He was talking about Brad Stevens this past season being the greatest single season a Celtics coach has ever had. And I came back with there's a guy whose name is on the floor who might disagree with that. That line seemed right out of your playbook. I want to talk about Robert Williams, though, because I think he is a great fit for the team. He does kind of have that mindset that this team likes. They don't really have a guy like him. You can talk about Aaron Baines as a rim protector. You can talk about even Greg Monroe if they bring him back as a rim protector, as in he's a big guy that can be in the paint. But Robert Williams is a defensive force.
I was going to say,
there's
Robert Williams. I would say that Greg Monroe can learn something from Robert Williams.
Well, Robert Williams could jump, and that's going to be a big difference.
And play defense, because Greg Monroe was just not interested.
Now,
Too bad, because I liked the move, by the way.
What, getting Monroe?
Getting Monroe.
I did too. We were on the air. It was a good move, and it's kind of the same way I feel about this. You're picking at 27. This guy, at least people who would know, people who know the NBA, tell me a top 10 talent. It's a good pick. Nobody who's picked 27th is going to be called a bust. Nobody's out here calling J.R. Giddens a bust. But at the same time, I don't think this kid's going to succeed. I think not showing up to you. Not only did he not show up to the phone call the next morning, they tried to get him on the phone 10 minutes after the pick that night, and he was already gone. He was however many beers deep at Buffalo Wild Wings, of all places, if we've all been there.
Is that where he was?
I think, yes. Yeah, no, he's at Buffalo Wild Wings in Shreveport, Louisiana. Look, maybe he's a great kid, and that's fantastic, but I don't know if basketball is a priority for him. Just from what I've heard based on the 24 hours after the draft and people I've talked to, I don't know if he's a basketball-first kid. And to play for a guy like Brad Stevens, to play in the Celtics organization, really to play in the NBA overall, but specifically with the Celtics, you have to have a basketball-first mindset. People want to compare him to Marcus Smart. Yeah, Marcus Smart had his issues, but there was no question that he was committed to the game of basketball. If anything, the issue was maybe he was a little too into it. But I like the pick. If he pans out, fantastic. I'm not holding my breath.
I don't think you have to hold your breath, because I think even without a rim protector and a young athletic defensive presence that this kid may bring to the table. Okay, the Celtics have a championship caliber.
No, they can still win without him, and that's why I like the pick.
Yeah,
but there are some people already telling me, he's going to, whenever they play LeBron, he's going to be on the floor. He's going to make a difference against LeBron, protecting at the rim, and it's going to be great.
Down. First of all,
when they have to play the Sixers and Joel Embiid. We haven't seen the kid.
Right.
We haven't seen him on an NBA floor. Slow down.
And you keep using the word kid. You mature real fast when you sign a professional contract and realize that, basketball is going to be my vocation now.
I can't be getting drunk at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Exactly right. It might be time to step up and grow up fast.
I've never signed an NBA contract. I've never learned that lesson.
That's right. No, you haven't. Nor will you, Alex, I'm afraid to say. Unless you become a play-by-play voice sometime.
We can only hope. But anything else from the draft stand out to you? I mean, the one thing that stood out to me was Moritz Wagner to the Lakers, the kid from Germany by way of University of Michigan University. University of Michigan. I remember when he was falling, and around pick 24, 25, I know, he's still on the board to be a great pick for the Celtics. I had a bunch of the people I was with, actually said, no, he's not going here. It's too high. Second round pick. And then boom, he goes to the Lakers right before the Celtics. The Lakers and the Celtics, if they pan out, may have gotten the two best value picks in this draft. And, if the Lakers get LeBron, this is really setting up, Jimmy. I mean, this is setting up for you to love the next 5 years of NBA basketball.
Well, I love the Celtics-Lakers rivalry, always have, grew up with it, the whole 9 yards. I mean, everybody talks about how the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry is the greatest in sport.
It is.
I think basketball's Celtics-Lakers rivalry is even greater.
This is
different. By the way, it's different. It's fierce. They don't like each other. There have been fights. I mean, how do you qualify this, right?
And this should be a whole nother segment, but I just want to get this in, because this is something I've been thinking of over the last couple of months. You know what the greatest rivalry in sports is? At least it will say the last 50 years. I don't know about all time, because I don't want to get into Muhammad Ali and some of his rivalries and
Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali. Yeah,
I'm going to say it was Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. because even though Manning played for two different teams,
I think there has to be a little bit of hatred in there. There's respect.
There wasn't
There's mutual
but,
respect.
But no, there was. Remember when Brady's emails leaked about Peyton not being Peyton's old and broke? There was. It didn't show, but there was disdain there under the surface. And I'll say this, and I know exactly what you're going to come back with, so don't jump in too quick because I'm going to guess it.
Okay.
When was the last time a position as important as quarterback, arguably the most position in sports? I know some people want to say NHL goalie. I'm going to say quarterback. We had the two best of all time at the most important position going head to head. LeBron never played Jordan. Nolan Ryan never pitched against Sandy Koufax, right? We never saw any of that except Brady and Manning. And I know you're going to say that the Celtics-Lakers rivalry should take the cake because Bird and Magic Johnson. I think Brady and Manning, for what they were, for their sport, they didn't mean as much, but they were better than Magic and Bird because people aren't comparing LeBron right now to Magic and they're not comparing him to Bird. Maybe they should be, but they're not.
You're comparing
they're
goat
comparing
to
him
goat.
to Jordan. Yeah.
Goat to goat.
We never had, and Brady ultimately settled the argument eventually, but there was never an argument over, at least, not since in the last 50 years, about who the greatest player was at the time when you could make the argument where both players were active. You could never make that argument except for Brady Manning.
Look, interesting thing to talk about. I mean, Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, maybe, back in the day.
That's why I said last 50 years, because I didn't want to forget something.
Wait, 93. Oh, God.
That would be 50 years, right? That would be the 50s, right? The 40s and the 50s.
Was like 65 years ago. Yeah, okay, never mind.
All right, so this interesting tangent. Anything else about the draft? Colin Sexton to the Cavs is an interesting one. People think he could be the guy to fill LeBron's black hole. Anything else?
No, I'll be honest. Again, talk to me in 2 or 3 years because I think they're all getting drafted too young.
That's my outline when talking about the NFL draft. All right,
that's where I learned it. Yeah,
Red Sox, very interesting weekend for the Boston Red Sox.
Always interesting with the Boston Red Sox.
They made it a little more interesting than maybe they needed to. We'll talk about that after this. This is Calling It, powered by CLNS.
Calling It is brought to you by American Broadcast Coaches, training the next generation of media talent and communicators. For more information, check out AmericanBroadcastCoaches.com.
Wait till I get my money right. I had a dream.
Welcome back to Calling It, Alex Barth. We got Jimmy Young in for Alex Lebowitz today. Jimmy, thanks again for taking some time today.
Does anybody remember me?
I think so. You had some pretty interesting soccer takes. I should have had you want to talk about the World Cup.
Yes, you should have.
We're not going to waste time on the World Cup on the show. Who should I be rooting for?
Wait. The biggest sporting event.
I'm the only person who's not watching it, and I have no problem with that.
I record every game.
It's been so nice out.
Every game.
I played 36 holes of golf this weekend.
Good for you.
I have no qualms about missing a soccer game.
All right, fair enough. And you know what?
I played well, too. I
played
well,
golf
too.
as long as you possibly can.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I can say. Because now that I can't play, I miss it all
I
the
do
time.
feel like I should. I'm rooting for Iceland right now. Is that should I be rooting for Iceland? Or no?
Done.
Who should I be rooting for? Are they actually
You know what? I'm going to give you a sleeper. I'm going to say the name Denmark.
Okay, that's close to Iceland.
Yeah, it's close to Iceland. Sure, okay.
Geographically, isn't it?
I still love Brazil. It's always my second favorite team. So I'm going to stick with that.
I can't root for the favorite. I never root for the favorite. I'm not going to root for Brazil. I'm not going to root for Portugal. I only root for the favorite when it's my team, my lifelong team.
Denmark is a good team to root for.
I root for Denmark.
Small European nation.
Funny names.
With funny. Well,
that's a big one.
Eriksson is one of the better players that I've seen, and I'm a big fan. So,
all right, that's enough soccer talk for the year for this show. We'll talk to you again when Christian Pulisic does something.
Right, it'll be 3 years from now.
Yeah,
leads us back to the World Cup.
Let's talk about the Red Sox though. Big series over the weekend with the Seattle Mariners. Big series. But before we could even get to that series this weekend, and before we get to it on the show, we had a little nugget courtesy of Michelle McPhee. You may remember her. She is the reporter that broke the Aaron Hernandez story a couple of years ago. And boy, did this, you want to speak. I was with you. We were out in Western Mass when the Aaron Hernandez story broke.
Oh, that's right.
Running a youth sportscasting camp at the time. But I certainly felt some deja vu Friday afternoon when it was announced that Hanley Ramirez was being investigated in relation to a fentanyl ring, a large statewide fentanyl ring being run out of Lawrence, Massachusetts. It has since been proved. Now, I've tried to find the answer to this, and nobody has given me a straight answer, Jimmy. Maybe you saw it because you read more than I do.
That's pathetic, by the way. But go ahead.
Was it false that Hanley was involved in the investigation, or was he involved in the investigation and cleared of involvement with the drug ring?
I don't know the actual...
Because those are two completely different outcomes.
Yeah, it sounds like that this gentleman who was arrested dropped Hanley Ramirez's name, knowing that he knew him well enough to drop his name, hoping to get out of the situation he was in, and it didn't really work very well. By the way, athletes have been named in criminal investigations for a long time. It happens, unfortunately, way too much when you're a public figure, okay? So, that being said, I don't know any more of the details. Other than that, it does sound like, and I had heard this before it was reported.
I mean, everybody's now coming out, and I think I'm the only person who didn't know. Everybody's coming out and saying, "Oh, somebody told me this months ago."
Yeah, I almost texted Maz because he was talking about it and hadn't heard anything, and I was like, again, no details other than he was being investigated. That's all. And when you hear that, you say, "Oh, that makes sense for them to release him without any compensation." It made sense at the time. And when they got rid of him, they finally did release him, everybody was searching for why.
Right.
What happened?
Sense. The vesting option didn't seem to be enough.
Nope. Especially when it wasn't imminent. It was still 200 at-bats away or something like that.
But then they come out, and at the time, right, when we didn't know anything else, everybody kind of said it was a bad decision. Now, and then they come out over the weekend after this report comes out and say, "Oh, we didn't know. This had nothing to do with it. We released him for a baseball reason." And then it's like, okay, well, you're sticking up for him. You don't want to get, the team itself doesn't want to get in any legal trouble. They don't want to say they knew before the police did because they get in trouble for that. And we're all like, okay. But now we're back to square one. And they cut him for baseball reasons.
Okay.
And I was at the game.
Now, wait. You're accepting the official statements by the Red Sox.
I'm saying this is what they're saying. The Red Sox seem to have said the wrong thing at every step through this process.
Yeah, I think I know that they get who they get PR advice from. I'm not going to start naming names. But I agree. I don't think they handled this well at all.
I was at that game Saturday.
By the way, because you're innocent in this country before proven guilty, it is difficult to come out with statements that basically say, "Oh, yeah, we knew about this. Oh, and that's why we cut."
But okay,
do you think they knew
about this? Do you think they knew about this?
No doubt in my mind, they knew something. They knew that he was being investigated. And you think
that's why they cut him?
Yep. And I think they said, "You know what? Before this gets crazy, let's get rid of him now." And that's probably what Alex Cora said to Dave Dombrowski.
But he was cleared, and he was cleared relatively quickly. Shouldn't the Red Sox be plugged in enough with the state police, the Lawrence police, whoever, that they should know, okay, this is going to come up, but it's not a big deal?
I don't know if they knew the extent of how big a deal it was, Alex.
Shouldn't they have the resources to figure that out? They're the Boston Red Sox.
It's a baseball team that's based in entertainment that happens to have a very rich owner who owns 2 media outlets in this market.
Let me ask you this. How many? Exactly.
So let me ask you a question. Is this story going to be worth burning a bridge of a source that you can constantly use anyway? Which I'm talking about is a globe police arrangement. You know what I mean?
How is not cutting him burning a bridge? All I'm saying is, shouldn't the Red Sox have been able to do enough where they could find out, okay, he's being investigated, he didn't have anything to do with it, he's not going to get in trouble, we don't have to cut him. Shouldn't the Red Sox, or did they make the decision that just because some a-hole dropped Hanley Ramirez's name at a
these days,
being
Alex,
stopped?
One video about someone in the public can go viral,
but he knew somebody who was a low-level member of a drug ring. Well, it's not great. Is that worth cutting him?
I think you try to. Yes, actually, I think any relationship like that, and especially in the last year of his contract, before anything vests and all that neat stuff, they had plenty of economic reasons to get rid of this guy. So you think
this wasn't the reason, but it was maybe the straw that broke the camel's back?
No doubt about it in my mind.
I can accept that. I can accept that, but at the same time, I mean, I was at that game on Saturday. They could not hit the ball. The bottom 5 of their lineup, 4 or 5, it depends on if Betts is healthy, which is now becoming a coin flip, is atrocious. They can't make contact. And while their top 4 may be just as good as anybody in baseball, I know there's the Yankees, whatever.
Their lineup, the Yankees lineup, is just ridiculous.
But the top half of the Red Sox is too. Mookie Betts and J.D. Martinez are arguably the 2 best hitters in baseball.
I agree, but that's 2 out of 9, where the Yankees' depth is much better.
No, they have 4. They have Martinez, Betts, Benintendi and Bogarts, and then sometimes Moreland's the sometimes Y, right? Sometimes a Val, sometimes not. But the bottom 4 or 5 of their lineup on any given night, they hit their designated hitter 9 a couple of days ago. They did that on Friday. And look, they took 2 of 3 from Seattle, but they had no business winning that game.
You know what I
Friday night.
Bring back Rusney Castillo.
Oh, well, yeah.
Pay the fee and get him up here.
Do you realize he's making more in AAA than
yes.
entire AAA rosters?
Yes.
No, but they're one step away from having to do that. And
I heard a rumor, whatever. They're talking with Oakland about a trade, perhaps, with the Oakland A's.
You heard? See, I heard, and here comes this is what everybody's been chastising Boston Talk Radio for, but we'll go down there. So do you think before we go down there, do you think a trade is necessary?
I think anytime you can improve your team, it is necessary. And I don't think you ever have enough pitching. And, you never know when somebody's going to blow out an arm. And can you improve those bottom 4? You just, ripped the batters, 6, 7, 8, and 9 on any given night. So
Jackie Bradley Jr. is hitting 180.
Yeah, but he had 3 singles yesterday.
I don't care. He's hitting 180.
Yeah, I know.
And I
love the analogy to Paul Blair. You don't remember who Paul Blair was, but he was an amazing center fielder for the Baltimore Orioles during the day in the 60s and 70s.
Jackie hasn't been that guy defensively this year, though. And the same could be said for Christian Vasquez. The thing with Bradley and Vasquez was as long as 1 through 7 can hit, you can keep those guys in your lineup because they make a difference defensively.
Yes.
And I know Bradley made that throw last week, but that's one play. He's been disappointing defensively all year. Vasquez has been awful.
Whoa. Hang on a second. You're so wrong. What do you mean disappointing? He's made some of the most... He makes it look so easy out there. That catch that he made with his back to the plate is one of the greatest catches I've ever seen in baseball.
And how about the ball he dropped in Minnesota?
Look, he's still a human being. He's not having a great year. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to sit here and defend him.
Why can't I say that he's not worth keeping in the lineup? He's not right now.
I think if you can find someone to replace him that is a better offensive force, and somehow, then by the way, I think they're shopping and looking for that. But I'm not sure I would give up any of their starters right now. I would not give up any of their starters right now. And I'm talking about 60.
Can I give you a name that I thought about? So I was looking at.
By the way, trade talk to me. As you've heard many times on sports radio.
No, it's BS, but it's fine. All right, fine. I'll say this.
Let's create what might make sense for them. If they can get a hitting outfielder, someone who's hitting better than 250, okay, with some pop in his bat that isn't going to hurt you defensively, and you don't have to give up any of your starting pitching, which basically means everybody but Craig Kimbrell is available, as far as I'm concerned. Brian Johnson would be a perfect guy to trade.
And that's kind of the route I want to go down here before we wrap this up. What can the Red Sox do to make a trade? Because I talked about this on a Red Sox roundtable on CLNS last week. Dave Dombrowski, this is what Dave Dombrowski does. He's kind of hamstrung himself here.
Yes,
he doesn't have the assets he needs to make the moves he needs to make. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean he can't make a trade, but what should they be looking for? They're not going to get a top-of-the-market player. They're just not. All the talk about Manny Machado, and I've been in on that, but that's not going to happen. Nope. We need to be realistic.
Nope.
What they need to look for is players on non-contending teams who have proven they can play but are having down years. Not as down as Jackie Bradley Jr.
Where a change of scenery might help them pick back up.
A change of scenery kind of guy. That's the kind of player they need to be looking for.
I'd like to see him get a character guy. You know who they picked up back in the day would have been perfect? Is a guy like Don Baylor.
All right, I don't know who that is, but...
God, you don't know who Don Baylor is? I think he's sorry about that.
Oh,
sorry about that.
Brutal.
Sorry. I tend to do that with audio guys, by the way, over my career. I tend to boom because I get so passionate about it. But I'm pretty sure he still has the record for most hit by pitch in one season.
I mean, hey, that would be better. At least he's getting on as opposed to the rest of the lineup. No, a guy like...
he was a character guy.
A guy like Jed Lowry in Oakland, who's proven he could play at the major league level. A guy because second base has been a black hole.
Do you know that, speaking of YBA memories... The kids interviewed Jed Lowry when we got him when John Good came on from the Lowell Spinners back in the day. Anyway, I'm dropping a few names here, but would I love Jed Lowry to come back to Boston?
There might be time to dig that up. A guy like Jed Lowry, a guy like Billy Hamilton in Cincinnati, he's only hitting 220, but that's still 40 points higher than Bradley. He's an outstanding fielder. He'd be faster than anybody on the team. I'd feel a lot better with Billy Hamilton hitting 8th or 9th in this lineup than Jackie Bradley Jr. And what do you have to give up to get a guy like Billy Hamilton? Maybe it's Jackie Bradley. Maybe it's a city-for-city swap. Maybe it's a guy like Blake Swihart. Maybe the Reds say, we're not a great team right now, but
so bad
we have
Blake
the time to turn this guy around. Oh, the Red Sox ruined him.
They totally ruined that guy. It's really a shame. Yeah, no, it's a shame.
All right, you got any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
I do. I tell you, remember last year when the Red Sox were somehow or other winning the division and nobody cared?
Kind of like right now?
Yeah. I mean, they're playing great baseball. Second, they have either the Yankees or the Red Sox.
Are they playing great baseball, though, or is everybody else just trash?
Everybody else is trash, but you still can only play the teams on your schedule. So you could only beat those teams. I don't care if they're trash or not. You still have to win the game.
The Red Sox are on pace right now to be in the top 5 in terms of wins in a season in franchise history. Mm-hmm. Is this an all-time top 5 Red Sox team? Just eye test. It's not. Ability-wise, it's not. But they're going to be wins-wise, or they could be wins-wise if they keep this pace up. And that's kind of what I think people are losing sight of.
That's a reflection of the poor quality of play in Major League Baseball.
No, it is. But
all you got to do is listen to that guy, Matt. He'll talk about that all day long.
The wins also don't reflect the team. And I think some people in that, they say, you don't need to change it. They're an all-time great Red Sox team.
I think we're so freaking spoiled in this town. It's unbelievable to me. If you're not the greatest team of all time or the greatest player of all time, people, are you not entertained?
Well, I'll go back to what I said.
I miss them when they have off days.
Right.
That's a good sign.
I do, and I do too. Well, I didn't so much during the NHL and NBA playoffs, but I do now. And if you really miss them, you get up to a Little Spinners game. # shameless plug, littlespinners.com.
That's good. Plug away. We love this.
I'll say this. When there was the talk about trading Rafael Devers for Manny Machado, and people don't want to do that because they're too attached to Devers. When there's talk about signing LeBron, and people don't want that because of his history in the city. When there's people saying, you can suspend Gronk for the rest of the regular season, it doesn't matter. We don't need him to win. You still, I feel like people get caught up. They get so attached to their players that they forget that you need talent to win. Just because it says Boston on the jersey, or New England, or Red Sox, or Celtics, or Bruins, or whatever, doesn't mean you're going to go out and win the championship. The reason that this city has been so successful is because we have 3 great owners in Jeremy Jacobs who have hired the right people, who have signed, drafted, and traded for the right people, who have gone out and put in the work. And I think people forget that sometimes. You need talent to win, and as good as the Red Sox are, they're still a piece or two away from getting to where they need to be. If they want to win a World Series this year, it's going to hurt.
Hang on a second.
It's just what it is.
All right, here's a problem with baseball. 162 games. You have to build 2 rosters. You have to build the roster that gets you through 162 games. And then you have to build a roster that you could have to win an elimination game right off the bat and then a couple of short series. So there's 2 different types of players that you're looking for throughout the entire year. And that in itself makes it unique. Certainly. That being said, I'm not going to disagree with the fact that you need talent to win. I agree 100%. You always need talent to win. And your minor league baseball your system needs to be stocked with talent so you'll never be in a position like the team is in right now.
And at least MLB-ready talent. Look, they had a good draft. There's some guys that are 16, 17 years old, but Dave Dombrowski doesn't have anybody he can call on right now.
I don't think you can draft 16 and 17-year-olds. 18.
From the Dominican, you can.
Oh, from the Dominican, which basically you never know what year they actually were born.
Yeah, well, that's another. All right, on that note, Jimmy, we're going to wrap this up. Make sure you follow us on Twitter @CallingItPodcast. Check us out. Check CLNS out online. You can find our show there. CLNSmedia.com. Thanks to Matt Kalman for joining us earlier in the show to talk Bruins. Jimmy, thank you very much for filling in for Lebowitz this week. My name's Alex Barth. We will be back next week. Lots to talk about as always, so catch us then. Until then, talk to you later. Bye.